Okay, YouTubers and space detectives, this is Joe from ArtAlienTV. Now today I've got a bunch of things to show you, including some articles about the helicopter, which has failed. Now, it hasn't completely failed. They've delayed the launch, or the maiden flight of the Mars copter, Ingenuity, for about a week because there's been some problems. Now, I've got an article here which explains it. I'm not going to read all of it to you. I'm just going to show you a bit of it. Technical issue delays NASA Ingenuity helicopter's first Martian flight. Now, it says here, NASA's Ingenuity Mars helicopter will take its first experimental flight no earlier than Wednesday, following an aborted high-speed rotor spin test on Friday. NASA decided to reschedule the chopper's initial takeoff, right? The command sequence controlling the test ended early due to watchdog timer expiration, right? According to NASA's blog announcement. This occurred as it was trying to transition the flight computer from pre-flight to flight mode. So there's a technical glitch with the actual flight command system, in basically a software error probably. There's something going on there. Much like a human regulator, Ingenuity's watchdog timer helps keep the aircraft safe, alerting its system to any potential issues and pausing the process if any problems are observed. So it may be something very, very minor that is picked up, a very minor technical fault, and it's decided to shut itself down until they know what that is and it can be remedied, okay? So it's probably something really, really minor. But, as I mentioned in my previous video, there's something very odd about this copter, and it doesn't quite add up. Now, I've been doing a bit of homework here in the last couple of days, and I've been trying to work out what the real atmospheric pressure of Mars is, okay? Now, officially, first of all, I'll show you this. I put this article up on Mars Magazine, my Facebook group here. I put this up the other day, yesterday in fact. Now, one of the guys from NASA put this up on Twitter, and he's either from NASA or he's a scientist anyway. Now, he's put this article up here, Tony Rice, and I got it from there, and then put it up on Mars Magazine, and I'll read it out to you. Anyone spot the lie? Now, if you look at the actual picture here, this is very misleading. Mars, air pressure 7 millibars, air temperature 105 to 9 Fahrenheit. Earth, air pressure 10, 13 millibars, air temperature, blah, blah. That's not really what we're looking at here. Look at the pressure. Now, 7 millibars, you would think, if you were just working it out roughly, is less than 1% of Earth's air pressure, right? That's what you would think, isn't it? Because that number is under 1% of this number, right? Now, if that was 10.1 millibars, then it would be 1%, but it's not, it's less than that. But, now, I remember years ago, a scientist came onto my site, onto ArtAlienTV on YouTube, after I posted a video showing a bird flying on Mars. I also, around that time, showed 1 or 2 UFO videos of things flying around on the surface. Now, back then, this was years ago, right? Back then, I worked out that the air pressure on Mars must be much higher than we're being told, because otherwise these things would not be able to fly. Okay? Now, bear in mind, now, you've also got to take into account that Mars has less gravity than Earth, about a third, just over a third, 38% or 37%. NASA can't seem to agree on that, but it's about 37, okay? And obviously this Ingenuity copter weighs 4 pounds, but of course that would be more like 1.4 pounds or approximately in that gravitational situation on Mars, okay? So it weighs a lot less, so that helps the issue. But even if you believe this set of numbers here, which are pretty accurate, and also the rotor speed is approximately 5 times the speed of an average helicopter on Earth, okay? That also gives it much more lift, right? But this guy who's a scientist, right, has put the 7 millibars, he actually said it's about 1%, okay? But that's not how millibars work. Now, the scale, the millibar scale, doesn't work like that, because I've got another article here, right? And this throws serious doubt on those measurements, because this is another article here. This is Popular Mechanics, How to Fly a Helicopter on Mars, right? To understand the monumental task of flying an aircraft on Mars, one needs to consider the atmosphere. The red planet's average atmospheric pressure on the surface is about 6 millibars. Less than 0.06% of the air pressure at sea level on Earth. So it's not even 1%. It's not even a fraction of 1%. It's a fraction of 1%, okay? It's ridiculously low. In fact, it's practically nothing, okay? According to what we've been told. Now, I calculate that the air pressure on Mars must be at least 10%, or somewhere between, I would say, about 7 and 20% of Earth's air density, okay? The air pressure. Now, this is obviously variable, okay? But on Mars, it's supposed to be very, very low, like all the time. But according to the weather and stuff like that, it will change a bit, like it does on Earth, depending on whether it's cold or hot or wet or whatever. The amount of water molecules in the air and humidity also have a large effect on the actual air pressure, okay? Now, I've been saying this for many years. I think that the air pressure and air density of water, H2O in the atmosphere, is much higher than we're being told, as I have shown recently with the amount of cloud that's been seen on Mars above Gale Crater. There's been clouds filmed above Gale Crater now for weeks and weeks on end, 3 or 4 weeks in fact, and it's the most we've ever seen. So there's something going on here, right? I smell a rat. To put it another way, the atmosphere on Mars' planet's surface is as thin as our planet's air at 100,000 feet of altitude. Helicopters have never flown that high. The altitude record for a rotorcraft stands at 40,000 feet, just over. And during that flight, the engine flamed out and the pilot had to land using autorotation, basically crash landed, right? And it goes on, it goes on. So I'm not going to go through all of this. I'm just showing you that there's a lot more going on here than we're being told, and that the air pressure is even lower than we're being led to believe, according to the official numbers, okay? But of course, I don't believe the official numbers, because if they were true, this thing would still not be able to fly, even though it has 5 times the rotational speed of an average helicopter on Earth, okay? It just doesn't add up. It really does not add up. The numbers do not add up. The actual, according to their own numbers, NASA's own numbers, the actual air pressure on Mars is not even 1%. It's a tiny fraction of 1%. It's something like 0.006 of a percent, okay? It's ridiculously low. In fact, it's according to that, it's literally non-existent. But we've seen clouds on Mars. And I've shown over the years many images on Mars of things like birds flying and UFOs flying around above the surface on Mars, and even what looks like an insect or drone or something as well. So there's obviously a lot more air pressure than we're being told, because none of this stuff would exist otherwise. And it's not as if I've only found one UFO on Mars. This is one of them. This was actually found by Terry Burnett, I think. I'm going to just play a clip of this video. It's got some highlights of some of the things that I've shown in the past, i.e. UFOs and birds and things, okay? This is the black rod UFO, okay? Just going to play that through a little bit. And there's a white rod UFO that appeared milliseconds later, which is probably the same one, or that's the black rod over there. This is the white rod. So there were 2 of these. One was black, one was white. That's the black one, it's moved. And there's also clouds. Now, I've been showing these for years, but recently we've seen a lot more of these, okay? Especially above Gale Crater. Now, this is one of the videos I did years ago, and this was spotted by Steve Bolden. Brilliant find this. I think this is an insect because it has 3 parts, an abdomen with what looks like a sting on the bottom here, a body and a possible head here. if this was moving as insects do, the wings would not be visible in a low resolution image like this, okay? This image is taken from the Hascam, which is only a 1 megapixel image, okay? This, I think, appeared very close to the rover and was travelling at some speed, but not ridiculously fast, okay? So it says to me more of an insect rather than a drone or a UFO, whatever. But we don't know. But this to me looks like an abdomen with a sting on the end, a bit like a mosquito or something like that. And of course, if the wings are moving at speed, which they would not be visible in a low res picture. But you can actually see, if you look at the distortion above this on the close up, you can see that there is distortion above here, as if there's something moving rapidly above it, okay? Which says to me that it's probably an insect. It may not be. We will probably never know. But this thing's very small and appeared very close to the actual rover. And if you look at the images, it only appeared in the left one. It didn't appear in the right one. So it flew past the edge of the rover, very low and probably pretty fast. Okay, so there was that one. Now these simply would not be able to fly if there was no air pressure. Okay, here it is. So this is the Hascam. Now the Hascams are low down, sort of just under the rover. Okay, so this was spotted from very low down near the ground. So it's not very high up. It's very hard to tell, but I calculated that this is most likely an insect. Okay, so this thing wouldn't have flown otherwise. And there's things like the bird that I've shown as well. Here are some of them here. This is one I painted myself. I just put that there for comparison. This is what looks like an ibis type sort of bird on the ground. This is an eagle type of bird here, a hawk, and this is another bird here on the ground, which was upside down. I had to flip it round. So there's at least 3 species there, okay? And I've shown many of these in the past, bird skulls and remains on the ground, which means these aren't very old. In other words, if these remains are still in this quite good condition, they cannot be very old, which means the air density is still higher now, because these have been seen above Gale Crater for many years. I've shown clips of these over many, many years of things flying around in Gale Crater, quite high up sometimes, right? So the air density must be higher than we're being told. That's not the only one. This is one of the best ones. And this was found by Marcello Irzusta a couple of years ago. This is one of those hawks I just showed you. This is a hawk. That wing configuration is a hawk. The head would be at this end and the tail at this end. And you can even see, if you look really carefully, there's a smudge just below there where the feet are. But because of the low resolution of the camera, it just shows up as an actual smudge there. But that says to me, this is a bird with feet hanging down below, but there's not enough detail to show them, so they show up as a blur, okay? And you can even see a highlight just here, where the sun is hitting the top of the bird tail section here, and the back of the wing, just there. You can even see that in the raw image, okay? Just there, look. So that's a bird, or a drone that looks like a bird, okay? Either. So these things have been spotted for years now. So this says to me that the air density on Mars must be higher than we're being told. No way is it only 1%. No way is it a tiny fraction of 1%, like I showed you. Impossible for a helicopter to fly in those conditions. Unless the helicopter has some kind of other technology hidden inside it. Now, I did wonder about this. Now, apparently, it's got a 500 watt, just over I think it's 503 watt motor in here. Okay, 503 watts, and it's solar powered. Well, it's solar charged. Got the solar panel on top that charges the batteries inside. But what if there's an anti-gravitational device in here? Some kind of anti-gravity technology which will help it fly. Is that possible? I think it is. Because none of this adds up. The air pressure is way, way too low according to their own statistics and numbers for this thing to fly, even accounting for the fact that the blades will travel approximately 5 times faster than the average chopper will. Okay, so I'm saying that the air density is something between sort of about 7 and 20% of Earth's, because otherwise the blades would have to go 1,000 times or 100 times faster, at least 100 times. If it was 1%, then the blades would have to go 100 times faster. Then you take off about 60%, because basically the gravitational difference. Okay, if you calculate that, if you work out the speed and the gravity, it still doesn't add up. It really doesn't. Now, I'm not a mathematician, I'm not a physicist, but I can add up I can do basic maths, and the maths do not add up here. And if any of you can explain how this works, I'd like to know, because none of it adds up. It really doesn't. Now, I did on that video I showed you, on this image, I think I showed this a minute ago. When I uploaded this video, a scientist came on in the comments and said, "Oh, it can't possibly be a bird because there's not enough air density for it to fly." Now, by the sort of demeanour of this guy's comments, I worked out he was probably from NASA or JPL or one of those groups, okay? And he was telling me that this could not possibly be a bird. And this has happened with other videos I've done showing UFOs and things flying around, all right? Where people have said, obviously people from NASA or scientific guys, you can tell by the way that they're patronising sort of comments are written. He said, there's no way this could be a bird, or the other things I showed could be UFOs or anything, because there's not enough air density. And he said to me that the air density on Mars is not even 1%, it's more like 1,000th of a percent. It's not even that. It's less than 1,000th of a percent of what ours is. Okay? Now this was a few years ago, and I was like, wow, okay. And I looked it up, and that is exactly what I'm showing you today, right? That's what he was telling me. He was telling me what he'd been told, or what he's been told by NASA, believing that to be absolute gospel. Now, of course, I never believe anyone who claims anything like that to be gospel, because the evidence I've got shows that that is not gospel, because I have multiple examples of things flying on the surface that would never fly in an atmosphere as thin as they say it is, okay? So that we're being lied to yet again, okay? Absolutely unbelievable. And my faith in what we're being told is diminishing by the hour. I am disappointed about the chopper not taking off, of course. But when we have things like this flying around, this is a UFO, that's the rod UFOs. You can see both of them in the lower one here. There's the white one and there's the black one. In the top image, we can see just the black one, but then it shoots down here to the left. These images were taken literally a millisecond apart. About a second, maybe 2. So it's gone down here and shot down to there. And then a white one appeared as well. But these are quite small. These are only 6 inches or something. The baseball bat, just there, look at that. So these things have been spotted for years, and there's also been some quite bright coloured ones above Gale Crater spotted as well. These ones here, which appear as very bright, kind of almost like a lens flare, but when you actually look at it, it's not a lens flare at all, because it's got a spike on the top. This one here and this one here. And it's got a little dome thing underneath, this one, when you enhance it. So that's what it looked like, but this is a negative of that. Okay, that gives you a really good shape. So there's weird things flying around. UFOs flying around in Gale Crater. There have not been many spotted recently, not for a couple of years. But the little birds, or the large birds I should say, some of them are very large, have been spotted from day one. But they're usually so far away they just appear as little specks in the sky. So it's impossible to say what they are, and you could easily say, oh, that's just a JPEG artifact or whatever, because they are literally like 2 or 3 pixels, okay? But occasionally they come close enough for us to get a decent image like this, okay? So there we are. So you can actually see that there's a spike on top of that and a little dome thing underneath. Absolutely incredible. So things are flying around on the surface. There are clouds in the sky, which have been there for weeks and weeks. And there are bird remains on the ground, including some that were obviously flightless birds, or may have been flightless birds, like this one. This could even be a pterodactyl, like I said before. This is from last year, about a year ago. This is not living, this is crystallized in the incredibly rich minerals in the salt lake of Gale Crater, okay? And there's something fossilized in this rock as well behind it here. This looks like a fish or some kind of creature here, and some very complex kind of fossil material here. And there it is, you can actually see it right there. Unbelievable, right? It's either a pterodactyl or some kind of very primitive bird, kind of cross between a sort of dinosaur and a bird, that kind of thing, okay? So there we are. Now, before we go, I'll show you some more of these clips at the end of the video, because I'll come back to one or two of these things. Now, before we go, I've got a couple of nice new Perseverance rover gigapans for you to look at. And what I've done, like I did last time, is I've done a left and a right one, and you can line things up and flick between them like this to see things in 3 dimensions, 3D. Now this thing here is not very detailed. Bear with me, this is quite a long way from the rover. It's right back here. It's more than 20 feet away, maybe 30. I estimate this to be about 4 or 5 inches in height. Don't know exactly, doesn't really matter. But we have a very perfect ovoid object with what looks like a carving on the front of it of a head. There's an ear there, comes down, there's the chin here, goes up like that, there's the top of the head. I can just about make out a couple of eyes there. It may not be, but it's something carved by the looks of it. It doesn't look natural, and it's propped up next to this other thing here. Now, I will take some clips of some of these things for you, but unfortunately, most of the things in this new gigapan, this is Sol 50, right? Percy Sol 50. So this is literally images that came up yesterday. Unfortunately, the things of interest that I've spotted, at least, are all a bit out of visual range. We've got another thing here that looks like a skull, just here. Standing up, just there. And we got that I've just showed you, which looks odd, which looks to me perhaps like either a figurine, part of a figurine, or perhaps a grave marker or something like that. Who knows what it is? Just there. There's also this thing here that looks a bit like a skull, and in fact you can see the chin there, and that's the mouth. You see just about make out a nose and a couple of eyes, and the head comes up like this, right? If these things were down here, near the front of the image, it would be a different story. You'd be able to see lovely detail. Okay, so I'm not going to go on about that, because I can let you researchers and space detectives out there look through this yourself, and I'm sure you will find a lot more than I've found. 2 new gigapans to search for the Perseverance rover. And another thing with the helicopter, the fact they're delaying the flight also says to me that they're a little bit worried about what they might photograph on the ground. Now, this is a space image taken from the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter of the Perseverance rover landing site. There's the Percy rover there, right? And you can see the blast radius either side of it there, where the rockets blew the dust away from the ground. Now, if you look at the ground just here, there's a rectangle in the ground, just here. There's a rectangle just there. You can just about make it out, okay? Now, this NASA image, satellite images, had the contrast turned up a bit, okay? And when you zoom out, you can see there's multiple structures in the ground here. Rectangular structures and square structures, okay? They're all over the place. And in fact, if you look at the whole crater, there's loads of crazy stuff up here as well, which I've shown before, up here and down here and around here as well, including domes and structures in the ground, which are ruined and buried in sand, okay? Now, I've shown these many times before, so I'm not going to go through all of that now, but basically, what I think they're worried about is that when the copter drone takes off from the area here, now the rover has moved slightly, but not very far. It's probably down here now, and it's adjacent with all these ruins that can be seen in these images, right? Now, I'm just going to show you some of that because I showed this stuff before, but I've got some clips here. Now, here's the rover, all right? Up close, this is an up close clip of that image. Look in the ground here, and we've got straight and rectangular parts. Now concentrate on this part of the image here. I flipped it to negative and turned the contrast up, and you can see that there is a rectangular structure in the ground right there. That's the rover, that yellow thing in the middle, and this is a structure in the ground. In other words, this is buried in sand, but from the satellite images, the radiation can be seen bouncing off the hard stone-like or hard surfaces of these structures, even though they're buried. The same can be done on Earth from altitude. Now, unfortunately, the Ingenuity will only be going to about 15 feet, not much higher than that. It may go to 20 feet or plus later on when they get more confident with it, but I predict it will never go much higher than that. A, because I don't think the air density will let them, maybe, but I think they're worried about showing some of these structures on the ground, because if you go much higher than about 50 feet, these things will be very visible from above. And I don't think they want to show us close-ups of these ruins. When you're on the ground, all you see is loads of rocks and debris, okay? But just below the surface are structures, multiple rectangular structures. Here's another enhancement there, right? If you look here, there's more rectangles here. There's one here. There's another one here. There's some stuff up here. You can see these lines in the ground, okay? Look at these lines coming across. There's something here right by the rover. That's the rover there. And then that one's even clearer there. You can see this rectangular structure here. So there are multiple ruins right by the rover. This is why it has ground penetrating radar. That's what it's for, to look at the structures underground, right? That's why they went there. That's why they chose this area. But unfortunately, if they go much higher than 15 feet, which they probably won't, they will show these in the Ingenuity photos and footage that we get, because these will be quite obvious from height above the ground, okay, from that sort of height. So some weird stuff going on here, and I do wonder whether this rover has already flown and they've just said that there's been a problem so that they can doctor the images before we see them, or not show us the images that they've taken over this period when it's not supposedly not flown, okay? How easy would that be to do? If they say, oh, we're going to delay the flight by another few days or a week, right? During that time, they could take off and land and take all the photos they like and never show us them. And then have the official maiden flight in about a week's time and show us images later on, once they've had time to look through the images and look at the ground and decide what not to show us. Very suspicious. There was one other thing I'm quickly going to show you. I'm not going to read all of it to you. I'm just going to read you part of it, and then what I'll do is I'll put a clip of this in so you can pause it in a second and read it yourself, because this is brilliant. This is one of the best comments I've read in a number of years. And it's a comment that was on this video here: Mars Perseverance copter ready, new finds. This was from about a week ago, okay? And here's the comment at the top by Beretta 9mm1. And this is brilliant. I'm just going to read you part of this. What I've got here, I've got the image up here. And what I've done is I've taken a clip of that. And what I'll do, I'll put this clip in a second so you can read the rest of this. I'm just going to read you some of it here. No matter which Mars anomalous site I look at, or even just both orbiter and the rover pictures, past and present, I eventually kind of break down into a dismal, sad kind of mood. And after a while, it becomes so obvious that I'm looking at a planet-sized graveyard. Now, I've been saying this for many years. It basically says it can be upsetting looking at these remains on the ground, because it's quite obvious we're looking at a massive graveyard and a battlefield. When you see some of the things that I've shown, like tanks and weaponry and vehicles, ruined vehicles and structures and soldiers on the ground, it's pretty obvious that there was a war, and there was a nuclear war on Mars. And here's one of the people that probably survived it. Why do I think he survived it? Because this dude has breathing apparatus going over his nose, wearing a helmet. And basically, that says to me that this dude was walking around on the surface after the atmospheric conditions changed. In other words, he wasn't breathing under his own power, he was having to use something else to help him breathe. Okay? So that says to me that there were survivors of the nuclear war on Mars, and that there were still operations going on the ground afterwards by military personnel. And I've shown a number of these, and one of my favourite images is this. This shows at least 3 personnel here, one of them of a different species, it looks like here, with tubes coming out of his nose, just here. There's that one I just showed you, and here's another one. They were wearing personal protective equipment, okay, including breathing gear, and wearing helmets, and probably had quite extensive body armour and suits as well to protect them. So there were people walking around up there doing stuff, probably shooting each other after the nuclear war on Mars, and these may be fairly recent. But this says to me a lot of them survived, and there probably still are survivors there now, and here is one of them, perhaps. Not only do we have a bird perched on top of this rock, which looks like a pigeon or dove, we also have this dude here, which I've shown before, peering at the rover from behind a rock. There's a lot more going on Mars than we're being told, but I think the moisture and the air pressure conditions are way higher than we're being told. I would estimate at around 10% of Earth, perhaps even as high as 15 or 20%. But I would say, I would calculate around 10%. For the copter drone to even take off, it would have to be around that, about 7 or 8% of Earth, to get enough lift for that thing to take off, okay? Thanks for watching, I'll see you soon.